Okay, I know it's a bit late, but I want to talk about the Odyssey. So I'm sure you've probably all heard by now at this point. I'm sure most of you have seen that Christopher Nolan is directing a new version of the Odyssey. There's a new Odyssey film coming out, and it has split the room. It's split the room mostly because of this poster, which shows, apparently, the helmet of Agamemnon. And Agamemnon is a Greek king, a Mycenaean king, and this doesn't look like a Mycenaean king to anybody who has studied archaeology of the period. This looks like Batman. And that's why there are so many posters now on the internet of Batamemnon. And there are posters comparing it to Agamemnon from Troy and Agamemnon from the Total War games, both of which look more like a Bronze Age Greek king would look. But the problem that I have with this film is it looks lazy. I'm sure the cinematography will be beautiful. I'm sure that the sets and the locations will look fantastic. I'm sure that the acting will be superb, but the costuming is lazy. This is lazy costuming. We have Anne Hathaway as Penelope, and she's just wearing like a blue flouncy-looking pseudo-peplos dress with what looks kind of like Roman hair, and Tom Holland is Telemachos, and he just looks like he's wearing a pretty boring bog-standard cotton tunic. Everybody is wearing trousers, and that's one of the main things that struck me, is the Greek soldiers, Odysseus's crew, everybody's wearing trousers in this, and notoriously the ancient Greeks saw trousers as barbaric. Persians wore trousers, Greeks do not wear trousers, and that's something that we got in Troy. You know, that the costume wasn't great, but, you know, men in skirts is what we want. And I've seen a lot of people with a lot of different attitudes from this is something that will colour how we see the past, and this is part of how people see history, to what does it matter, it's a fantasy film, and I need a walk, let's take a walk. One of the things I don't get is people who respond to this by saying, well, it's fantasy, it doesn't matter, the costuming doesn't have to be realistic for fantasy. And that just seems based on nothing. That just seems like a reflex reaction, like, don't you talk about my Christopher Nolan that way, this is a fantasy film, he can do what he wants. Because costuming for fantasy obviously makes a huge difference. The Batman costumes in every Batman film gets dissected by comic book nerds all over the world. The costume is also really important to the actors. It helps them to get into character, it helps them to inhabit their character, if they're wearing clothes that make them feel like they are that character. Bernard Hill, when he was playing Theoden in The Lord of the Rings, would talk about how his costume made him feel like a king. How the fact that there was embossed decoration inside his leather breastplate that nobody would ever see on screen made him feel like somebody had put a kingly amount of work into the costuming. It made him feel like he was Theoden when he put on that costume. Sean Bean and Viggo Mortensen wore their costumes offset to get into character. So the idea that costuming doesn't matter in fantasy is nonsense. And even if this is a fantasy film, which arguably it's not, it's a mythology, it's a mythological film, some of the stuff in this film may or may not be based on reality. We don't know, because it's, you know, a 3,000-year-old story nearly at this point. But does that mean it doesn't deserve the respect of a historical epic? Does that mean it doesn't deserve to be costumed as though Odysseus was a real king, as though Telemachos was a real prince? I don't think so. I don't think so at all. In fact, I think if you're doing a fantasy, you have to put more effort into the costume, because you're having to convince people that what they're seeing is real. So yeah, I guess what I'm trying to say with this is Christopher Nolan's The Odyssey doesn't look great from a costuming perspective to me, as someone who cares about history. And I do care. Like I say, I know that these things colour how people see the past. I know that media influences attitudes, because it's simply so objectively true and obvious that that is the case. And I wish there'd been some more adventurous costuming on this. I wish there had been some of the bravery that we saw from the Northman. I wish that there'd been some of the excitement and some of the actual epic lineage that we saw in Troy. This is the latest in a long line of historical epics like Ben-Hur, where thousands of people are dressed in the most extravagant clothing and the most sumptuously decorated clothing in some cases that the studio could procure. This comes after The Lord of the Rings, where just thousands and thousands of man-hours went into making costume that looks fantastic on screen and felt fantastic to wear. And this, costuming-wise, looks so lazy. Like, I have found a picture from the set of what looks like Penelope and Telemachus, and he's wearing a big, long, flowing white cloak, and he's got a coronet on. But there was colour in Warfare. I know that this is partly trying to do that whole fighting and warfare is gritty thing. And yes, but also, historically, there was colour in Warfare. You only need to look at the 18th century to see how recently people were wearing fantastically colourful lace and gold trim-covered uniforms into firearms-dominated battlefields. And 3,500 years ago, you better believe people were wearing colour into battle. You better believe that they were. And this is disappointing. And I disagree with people who say that it's disappointing but it doesn't matter. I think it's both. I think it's disappointing because we could have had a historical epic and instead we've got Batamemnon. It's disappointing because, once again, the fear of covering your actors' faces has trumped showing people wearing really cool Bronze Age kit, and if they'd put 5 minutes of thought into it, they'd have realised that wearing a boar's tusk helmet wouldn't have covered their faces anyway, because boar's tusk helmets didn't have faceplates. I think it's disappointing that we don't have Bronze Age Greeks depicted as Bronze Age Greeks. We have them as, BDSM classical Greeks done on the cheap, effectively. So I'm not excited to see the film. I'll probably just wait until it ends up on a streaming service, to be quite honest, because, why would I spend like 15, 20, 30 quid with a hot dog to go and see this in a cinema? It looks brown, it looks boring, I don't care, it looks flat. And it's important because this is how people very often learn about the past. They learn about it through media, they learn about it through video games, they learn about it through idiots like me on the internet, and they learn about it through films. This could be what sets somebody down the path of being interested in history, and that's great, but if it does it by showing the past in a really poor light, that seems like a shame, and it seems like this was a wasted opportunity to take what could have been a glittering rendition of one of the world's oldest stories, its most popular and enduring myths, from a period of bronze and strange mysterious ruins and legends and volcanoes and the wine-dark Aegean Sea and all the jewellery and gold and inlaid weapons and frescoes and palaces and olives, and instead everyone's just in black leather. Sigh. As Bernadette might say, it ain't it. It really ain't it. But diolch yn fawr iawn am wylio. Thank you very much indeed for watching. Happy New Year. This is the first video of 2026. Let me know if there's anything that you guys think I should be looking at. If there are any films coming out or that have just come out, let me know what you think about this. If you have an opinion on this, then absolutely share it in the comments. Diolch yn fawr. Fel ddudais i, as I said, thank you very much. And tan y tro nesa, till the next time, hwyl am y tro. I am now going to go and dismantle a sofa. Fun.
Big, manly, horny-helmeted Viking thanks to my patrons for making this video possible. Look at them all. You are all wonderful human beings. Masculine Viking thanks to you all. Yes. Yes. Delicious names.